Hello folks, welcome back. In this lecture we are going to talk about what is local repository and remote repository. We were talking about this one when we were talking about Maven goals, right? That is, I will show you over here. Yep. Whenever we execute install the packages onto the local repository for use as a dependency in the other projects locally. Which means that there is a local repository in our system. So far we haven't discussed about it. Let's go and see. Whenever we run our Maven project first time, it is going to create a local repository. By default, the local repository get created under the user's home directory with the .m2. User's home directory nothing but in my case I am using a user called Velaxy. Under that .m2 directory it got created. Even I can go to this directory through the file explorer. If I go here, again I'm going back to the projects and user. Under user home directory there is a directory called m2. If I go inside, there is a repository, and whenever we run any commands, it requires any dependencies, it pull from the internet and stores in the local repository. Nothing but this we call it as a local repository. It will get updated whenever we are changing the packages which we need to run our project, and this information again gathered from the pom.xml. Now let me show you how does it work. Let's assume that we have three developers and they are working on a project. Whenever they are working on the project, they might be using Eclipse and start building the projects. Whenever they build the project first time, it is going to create the .m2 directory in the locally, and it pulls the required packages which are needed by that application from the remote repository, that is Maven Central Repository we called. I will show you Maven Central Repository URL. From there, it is going to pull the required packages, not all the packages, only required packages it pulls and stores in the local repository. That is the reason whenever we build any application first time, it may take a while. Why? Because it pulls the required packages from the Maven Central Repository and keep it in the local system. But subsequent times it doesn't go to the central repository because packages are available in the local repository. The execution will be quicker. In some organizations, they will use a one more repository called enterprise repository, which will be internal for the company. Whenever we create new projects or libraries, those libraries we can push it into the enterprise repository. So if we want to keep our files in the only .m2 directory, then we can use the install. So Maven goals helps us to keep the packages or libraries which we have created under local repository or else in the enterprise repository. This is the central repository for all your employees, and usually companies use this one because to avoid the security incidents. Why? Because getting the packages from the enterprise repository rather than the central repository will be more secure. That's how the repositories does work. Now let's go back and run a Maven goal to add our packages to the local repository, and we'll see how does it work. So we should use install goal. It is going to add our packages to the local repository, right? If I go to file explorer, so this is the m2.repository, right? Here you can see com. I think it is already added to this repository. Let me go inside. Yeah, demo project and first Maven project. Yep, this is the one, right? And snapshot, you can see our packages is already added. Why? Because it is a Eclipse. By default it might be taking whenever we do some changes. Anyway, if you want to get it done, we need to go to the Maven project in our Eclipse and go to right click, run Maven build. Here I am going to give clean, nothing but in case any files are generated by the previous build, clean those files. Let me execute only clean and we'll see what happens. I'm just executing the clean goal. Okay, it has been executed successfully, and if I am correct, we could not able to see the target directory in our project. Let me go back. So I'm going back to my user. Under user we have projects, right? So projects and first demo project, and you can see there is no target directory over here. Here it is showing because it is not updated, but anyway if I refresh again it get created. Whenever we refresh it build the project. That's the behavior of the Eclipse, but anyway we cannot able to see the target directory because we have just cleaned. Again I'm executing my Maven goal on my project, that is run as Maven build clean install. Okay, whenever I do install, it automatically runs all these goals, whatever goals are there in the default life cycle prior to the install. everything it is going to execute. So let's execute it. I'm just running. Okay, build is successful. If I go up, you can see here it is executing all goals: default clean, default resources, and default compile, default test resource, like that. And testing also it has done. Once the testing is done, it's created a jar file. You can see here, this is the jar file it created. Default install, it should install in the local repository, right? So installing this one, it is taking the jar file from this location, and it is adding to C drive users veloxy.m2 repository. Okay, in this location it is adding. All right, so that is what it is going to do the install. That's all for this lecture. Hopefully you got enough idea how it works on the Eclipse. In next section we are going to see how to work with Maven on Linux system. There we discuss some of the concepts which we haven't covered over here. Thanks for watching and see you there.